Bert, 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 Bert! Get him, yeah! Ron Bain was right. Ron Bain was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Honey Dog Podcast. No, this is not it's not a Sunday. It's a Wednesday. It's the 26th of October, and you got to be wondering why. Well, this episode is because it's election season. And I'm not talking about your state, local, midterm, gubernatorial, or senatorial elections. I'm talking about the election of the officers of the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association, a organization that I am deeply, deeply involved with and have been for over 3 decades. And the process is such that most of the time these positions, president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, they go unopposed because it's a volunteer job, no glory, no gold watch, no pay. You just decide to give your time at another level, year-round, to helping an organization out that you're a member of, right? And I get it. I mean, it's like if you were a bird planner or a test secretary or a gunner or whatever your job was at your local NAVHDA test, and then they said, hey, Joe Schmo, would you mind doing this 365 days a year for us? Yeah, I'll tell you what, most of us wouldn't step up to it. But over the years, we've had a wonderful, wonderful amount of people that come in, give their time, and keep this ship running. Well, this ship has got, on all ships, there's a capacity of how many passengers it has, right? Right. The Titanic could only carry so many passengers. By law, they couldn't throw any more people into steerage. Well, NAVHDA's ship is overflowing with people. And luckily, a person has come along that wants to run for a position that's not already internal to the Executive Council. And his name is Terry Wilson. He is running for the vice presidency of NAVHDA. And I invited him to come on the podcast and talk about his platform. And that's just what we're going to do. And I will tell you unabashedly that I'll be voting for Terry. It is the only position, like I said, that's running opposed, and I get it, but I'm sure glad that someone is coming in here with some vision and some long-term plans. You're going to hear all about them on this podcast. You'll also hear about the fact that, this could be nepotism like back in Chicago days of politics, because Terry and I are related. We are actually shirt-tail cousins by the dogs that we owned. That's a true story. You'll hear that at the end of the podcast. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I want you to get out there. If you haven't gotten a ballot from NAVHDA and you're a NAVHDA member, I want you to look in your spam because I have a feeling sometimes that could come up in your spam folder, possibly your promotions folder, anything, okay? Find that ballot from NAVHDA if you're a NAVHDA member and vote, okay? You vote for whoever the heck you want to, but there's only one position that you can vote for when you have 2 choices. The choice I'm making is for Terry Wilson. I want you to listen to him and make up your mind. I love you guys, I love you girls, and I love you voters more. Hey, everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. I am on a Zoom call with Terry Wilson. If you don't know that name, think back to a magazine or a supply catalog that you might have got years ago called Ugly Dog Hunting. And that's where I first saw the name. And then later on, Terry joined the ranks of NAVHDA as an apprentice and a judge, and is now running for the vice presidency in the NAVHDA election. And I asked Terry if he'd come on and talk a little bit about his platform and dig up a little history on his old dogs, who we have a little blood relation there. I guess if we were doing 23andMe, we'd show up about 6 generations back as relatives, Terry. So Terry, I guess first off, let's get right into the election. What spurred the desire to run for office for NAVHDA?
Well, Ron, I've toyed with the idea for quite a while, and this election that was upcoming, I just decided there was time to get in. And I think that I can make a difference. Another, fresh perspective out there. And just, I'm not an outsider, but somebody different in there. And I thought, just to bring another view to the board. And that's the main reason why I want to get in.
And, for people who don't follow NAVHDA, and I don't want to say NAVHDA politics, but NAVHDA elections, it's typically, I don't want to call it a revolving door, but if you've served in a position in NAVHDA in the past, which means you're, tongue in cheek, that means you're dumb enough to give a lot of your free time hours away to the organization in whatever capacity you volunteer in. These are non-paid positions. They tend to say, hey, you did a good job with that. How about if you run for this? And how about if you move from director of this to director of that? It tends to be the same people, but you got to have that I understand kind of why they do it. And I also understand why a lot of people don't jump up and just say, like you did, I'm going to throw a lot of my personal time into an organization without any monetary compensation. So I want people to realize that, when you said an outside perspective, I think this is probably going to be the first time in I don't know how many years that it's a true outside perspective. What would be your, like, if you had one thing you wanted to change or could help implement a change in the organization, what would that be, Terry?
Well, there's a number of things that I think that we can do in NAVHDA. My platform has been, obviously is out there. But, one thing I think there's a bunch of things, but let's just go back. Number one, this organization has grown to 11,000 members, okay? So you hit on that earlier about, people stepping up and volunteering for the various positions. And I believe that we have 11,000 members and there's a lot of talent out there. And we need to be encouraging as a group to bring in, at least ask people to step up and volunteer, okay? And at least decide to try to go for a new position. Bring in, other perspectives within the group. That's one thing. And we need to encourage that. And, to some degree that's been done, but with committees and things like that. But I think that this needs to be on a regular, ongoing basis to encourage us. Another thing that we don't have is we seem to be stuck with our corporate sponsors, and we haven't really gained any new corporate sponsors recently. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a big thing. This is a big help. We being 11,000 members, I mean, we have a lot of impact, and with prospective sponsors. So that's something we need to actively be going out and pursuing. And I understand these things don't happen overnight. You need to develop relationships with the different sponsors. But, and to bring sponsors in on different levels, maybe just the invitational. I mean, we've done some of that, but I think that we should have a multi-tiered sponsor level too.
Yeah.
Those are a couple things that come to mind immediately. Again, I still think we should be actively encouraging the membership to step up and to volunteer for the various positions if they're qualified.
Right. I mean, you're 100% right. I was always, I come from a blue collar upbringing and background in trade. And when I got into NAVHDA, I was like, holy cow, there's doctors and pharmacists and business owners and people, the small group I first met was just a bunch of knuckleheads like me. And I was like, one of our past presidents was Dr. Connors, right? I think you're absolutely right. There is a lot of talent out there. And if it's not, I guess I could not speak for the board of NAVHDA, but I think you're right. I don't think they ever discouraged it, but I don't think they ever put out the call or put out the plea to say, hey, there's some accountants out there, there's some business owners that really know, especially when a company gets big, that know this is the next step we need to do. Like you've been in business your whole life.
Right.
What I want to touch on something. I was talking to some mutual friends of ours last night. You know, we for the first time NAVHDA hired a managing director.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a construction world, Terry, so I'm coming with a softball question maybe. What would be that managing director's job, or in the corporate world, is that just a position, a liaison between craft and management? What do you consider that job to be?
You know, I haven't really had enough interaction with the managing director to know that, but as I understand it, this individual is Kim Arnett, is there to work with the EC, work with the members. She's also responsible for outreach and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know I have not been privy to the actual job description itself,
Right.
but I think this is a good step.
Yeah.
I think it's long overdue, and I think that if done correctly, it will be fine. But
Yeah.
I'm not. Again, I think she's only been at the helm for just over 6 months, so I think it's a little early to tell how this is going to work out. I don't really have an opinion one way or another at this point, to be honest with you.
But I mean, in a business sense, when I heard that they were doing that, I was pretty excited, honestly. I was like, oh, good. You know, everyone knows the 40-hour week is going to turn into a 60-hour week. And we've got someone who isn't saying, hey, I'm just a volunteer. Could you see down the road with planning that we would have other paid positions?
I think that that's a possibility. You know, I think that this is like one step below. Originally, I think there was a question some time ago about hiring a CEO, and there is a big difference between a CEO and a managing director. See, whereas a managing director is responsible for a lot of the day-to-day operations, okay? And however, it's a multifaceted job. But anyway, I think there's a possibility. You know, there may be other positions out there,
Right.
We could look at.
I mean, I'd like to think so. I mean, it's nothing against the past. It's just volunteers, you know, life gets in the way sometimes. You know, I'm sure some of our volunteers are, you know, maybe parents to middle-aged children, young children. They've got family problems. You know, when you have this many volunteers running an organization, I mean, that's something I feel like if we can afford it, obviously everything's got to be done on a budget, that we should seek that out some more. I mean, I'd be all for that personally, but
I think at some point that has to be visited, and we have to look at that as we continue to grow. But I think that the growth has to be measured, and you know, I think that this should be revisited at some point,
yeah,
and discussed.
yeah,
But right now, I would say that's just. I mean, we've come. You know, it's been a quantum leap. Basically, not having a managing director or a CEO for years and years and years,
right.
And now we have this individual. So we have to give this some time and work this through and see how this falls out. You hit on something that we call the volunteers. I mean, you know, I'm on the board of directors of Rough Grouse Society, okay, and been there for probably 15 years or so. And you know, if there's one thing I've learned on the board is that the volunteers and the members, okay, those are the backbone of the organization. And these people, we need to work with them. We need to put faith in our volunteers. So we need to do this, okay? And we need to listen to them too. This is very important because without the volunteers, I mean, we're going to be in tough shape. I mean, I mean, you look at it, you go to the invitational, you go to utility tests, you go to clinics. I mean, we have tons of volunteers that are giving of their free time.
Yeah.
And, it's taking time away from their families and their business and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, again, they have families and, they can't be, it's actually difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
So we have to really listen to that membership and really, check the pulse of the membership.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because you're right. It's kind of an obvious statement. It's a volunteer organization, and without them, we wouldn't have it. But yeah, we would have. I mean, if half of the people quit volunteering, there'd be nothing. Literally, you wouldn't have to have them all quit. Half of them quit being interested in helping. So, I like the way that sounds, and making it value added to where the next volunteer wants to step up and doesn't hear that somebody who volunteered, wasn't listened to. So I think you're right. I think that's important. I want to jump back on your corporate sponsors because of your background in your state, in your platform. You said as VP, I would use my industry contacts in the wing shooting and hunting dog community to bring in more sponsors. And I know you said that's not an easy. It's not just like Terry's going to make a call to somebody. What do you think that could look like? What do you think we could handle besides maybe some different tiers? I mean, is there anything specific like a gun company that wants to be part of us, or a gear company? Something that's not competitive with. Obviously, we're not going to have two dog food companies. But what any of your thoughts on that might?
Oh yeah, yeah, Ron. There are many that come to mind. There's a lot of equipment companies out there, a lot of people selling dog products. I can think of 15 or 20 or right off the top of my head, and I'm not mentioning names at this point.
Yeah.
These are all people that I've done business with over the years.
Right.
And, I know them all personally.
Right.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But we also, I was thinking, a while ago, why don't we have an ammunition company?
Yeah.
There are ammunition companies out there. When we were, a small, I don't know, I hate to use the word dog club, but I guess you could, for lack of a better term, that's what it was. We didn't have that kind of national exposure, and
right.
A lot of the corporate sponsors have been with NAVHDA for quite a while. Myself, I've been with them for 16 years. Okay.
Right.
So, but now when we've reached this point where we're a major organization. We have some impact here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have become a player in this world, and now is the time to go after these sponsors. And these sponsors can help us tremendously with equipment or supplies, product, and or cash.
Right.
And this allows us to do other things. It just brings everything out where we have the ability to, now we can afford to do other things possibly. It's a win-win situation for both.
Right.
The ammunition company jumps out, and I'm going, why haven't done that? I don't know. Maybe we have. I don't know. Maybe that's been done. Yeah. Maybe that's been tried. But at least I don't know about it.
Right. And again, as members, I've never gotten a letter from NAVHDA board that says, oh, just by the way, we contacted XYZ ammunition company and they said no. So you're right. We don't know if they've ever tried it, but I think I was thinking of the gun and you're thinking of the parts that go in it that we use a lot more of. So, yeah.
Or even a gun. There's a good possibility of that too.
Yeah.
Again, I think those, an ammunition company, let's face it, we all hunt, we all shoot.
Right.
There's 11,000 members here.
That's a lot of shot shells.
A lot of shot shells and a lot of tests, a lot of clinics. This is, and the hunting end of it.
Right.
I found that when you as a corporate sponsor over the years, I have found that with NAVHDA, that it's a very loyal bunch towards Ugly Dog. Now, I'm not saying they're going to buy all the product from me,
Right.
but they tend to be very loyal.
Right.
And I think these are things that can be brought out.
Yeah.
We just need to. There's a bunch of corporate sponsors that we could bring in out there.
Right.
And again, as I said, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's something we should be,
Yeah.
working towards. Now, again, I don't know what's been done in the past. I just know where we sit with the corporate sponsors now.
Right. Right. You know, basically what we all know. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so, the last one was Dakota 283.
Right. Right. And before that, it was probably nothing new. Yeah.
Well, I know, yeah, we may have lost. I think at one point we had Sierra Trading Post, but they were sold, and
Yeah.
that was a thing.
Yeah.
And corporate sponsors don't last forever. I mean,
No, I know that.
relationships need to be maintained.
Right. Right. And another one may step in. I know that firsthand from selling this podcast. Not every corporate sponsor sticks it out. The good ones usually, but a lot of them come and go. I want to bleed that right into conservation partners in your platform. You talk about many of our members are waterfowl hunters, or at least I know I'm a 20% waterfowl hunter, and I know a lot of people around the country that do everything with their dogs. That's what we're kind of known for in our versatile dog world. And in your thing that you mentioned, Ducks Unlimited.
Absolutely.
Have you done work with Ducks Unlimited in the past, Terry?
Well, I have been involved with Ducks Unlimited for quite a while. I mean, I'm not an active volunteer, but I've, in the past I volunteered, and also I'm a life sponsor with them, and I don't know, whatever the sponsorship levels. Here again, Ducks Unlimited is one area. There's Delta Waterfowl, that's another area. There are other conservation organizations out there that we should be looking at partnering with. And I would say that Ducks Unlimited would be a major win-win situation for both.
Yeah.
And again, we've reached the point now where we have the ability to have outreach with other people. And I don't know why. I don't know if this has ever been attempted, but I do have the ability to work with the Ducks Unlimited Circle.
Right.
And so it's, I think that's very important. That
Right.
one would be very important. I mean, I wonder, I always wonder if we ever polled the membership, how many of them are members of conservation organizations. And I would be curious to know that.
Yeah.
Because in every organization, I mean, there are a lot of people that they belong, but they don't necessarily partner with other people.
Right.
But I would have to say to the members, a member of one of these organizations, I think you should really step up, even if it's $35 a year or whatever it is, okay?
Yeah.
Because these are the people, the conservation organizations, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, Ducks Unlimited, our Rough Grouse Society. We work on behalf to supply, to work to bring the habitat. I mean, and without the habitat, you're not going to have any hunting. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Right.
We've seen a decline in grouse hunting over the years, and RGS is working very, very hard to stop that trend, and we have been for a number of years. But these are the things that we need to, they keep the birds flying, and they keep them out there. They provide the habitat for them.
Right.
And so it's very important that we do that. It's extreme. I can't stress that enough.
Well, I would say, I think I told you when we had a little pre-chat last week, I was shocked at how many Rough Grouse Society did a survey. I would imagine it was based on state licenses and state reports in the grouse hunting states, and then compared that to their membership. And it was a pitifully low number. I don't want to quote it because it was so pitifully low and I don't want to get it wrong, of grouse hunters that
are not members of RGS. And now this could just be, and I've seen people do this a couple of years ago, and maybe I can make our chapter bring this as a motion to the annual meeting. And for people who don't know what that is, if you're in a NAVHDA chapter, the chapter can submit a motion of an idea. It could be, there's been ideas on different blank ammunition. There's been just hundreds of different motions over the years. And to encourage that, what you're talking about, membership in conservation organizations, I would like to have a motion that I should be the one that gets this drawn up now that I'm saying it, Terry. I shouldn't be the guy just saying somebody do this. But I know other groups have done this, like BHA, where they bundled, where you joined a group, but for a few dollars more, you actually joined all the groups. You know, like if you join NAVHDA International for X dollars, you would also become a member of PF, QF, RGS, and DU. I mean, that could be something. I don't know what it would take to do. I'm sure there's a lot of back logistics and computers and membership forms, but I know other companies have done it, and that might help increase those numbers of our members. Like you said, there's longstanding members of NAVHDA in different amounts of history in NAVHDA, from chapters to presidents to judges, that haven't been members of those organizations. And you're right, if they go away, you're not going to get a bunch of grouse hunters to start, bringing axes out to the woods. You got to have an organization that's supporting the bird that you chase. I'd love to see that a focus. I would.
That's a possibility. Again, that's something that, would have to be brought up with the motion. And,
Right.
But I think that's an excellent idea. I mean, it certainly is worth exploring. That's for sure,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that a couple of years ago that came out on somebody else's platform, and it was like, wow, it's like a one-stop shop. Sometimes what stops a person from doing is, honestly, life gets in the way, and they get the letter, they get the email, and they're like, I would, but I didn't have time, So yeah, I think I'll bet you we could do that with a motion and some investigation, and I'd be tickled to see something like that come through.
Anything helps,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you see this all the time. Even, if you look at a lot of duck hunting ammunition, there'll be partnered with federal or something like that. They'll have an application right there on the ammunition box to fill
Right.
it out in the DU. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done.
Right. All right, I want to move on to, you have on your platform a paragraph about the invitational. And the people who know me and have listened to me for years know that once upon a time I ran for president of this organization unsuccessfully, and I'm not saying I had the same thought process, but where I came from was I wanted to see the invitational expanded. It almost turned into it would take years, but to where you could have a smaller invitational in different parts of the country. So the people who live in Oregon, they just never have a good shake at it. And you have something in your platform about trying to make it more accessible. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think we were kind of looking at, you said it a little different than I do. I think that I would advocate that we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 invitational sites, and we could run 2 of them concurrently. So it could be a rotation. In other words, you could have an invitational site, let's just say the Northeast, okay?
Yep.
Could be New York, Maine. I'm just throwing that place. And then you've got Ohio or Iowa. And then you right now they have ZIA chapter out west, okay?
Right.
So if you had these 4 sites and you could run 2 of them concurrently and you could rotate them through. So in other words, you may have on one year, you may have a East Coast and West Coast. Another year, you may have again, it could be West Coast and Central. So
Right.
you'd rotate them through. So you'd be able to bring in a lot more people.
Right.
And I think if you ran them concurrently, now I know the first thing that everybody's going to say is that, well, that's too expensive. We can't do that. We don't have the judges. And I understand that to some degree that's true. But this is not something you do overnight. It probably takes 3 years, 4 years to get this
Right.
accomplished. Okay.
Right.
But what I'm saying is the key there is that, we need judges. We're working on that. You need more invitational judges. Obviously, you don't have invitational judges, you're not going to be able to run this. Okay. So let's bring in more judges into the cadre and let's move them up. I'm not saying move them up quickly. Let's not reduce our standards. We're not doing that. Okay. But let's start building towards that.
Right.
In the same time, and this is where I go back to the corporate sponsors, then you address the cost issue. Well, okay. Yes, there is a cost here and a cost there. Okay. But if you bring in more corporate sponsors, that's going to offset some of those costs.
For sure.
So I believe that NAVHDA knows what the cost estimates are per judge to bring them in. Okay.
Sure.
I know they have that information. So this is something that's not finite, but it's close. So you can construct this and figure this out, what this is going to cost to run 2 of these concurrently.
Right.
Then you go out and you secure the funds, where you start building towards that.
Right.
Okay? To me, being on the East Coast, if I were going to have to run on the West Coast, I wouldn't go.
Right.
I wouldn't go. Iowa, yeah, that's a stretch. I could do it. But, Ohio is easier.
Sure.
I'm not using those as specific as they're going to be there forever. I don't know that.
Right.
Okay?
But those are in past history, we know of those sites. Right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It could be, I don't know, it could be Minnesota. It could be South Dakota.
Right. Right.
And here again, but I think we need to be looking at the EC with the Invitational Committee. They need to be looking at new sites, okay, and going out and vetting them and finding. I've been contacted by a few individuals that are interested in, considering having, an invitational held at their site.
Right.
So, and one of them is in the Northeast.
Right.
Okay.
And you said there could be that person who's run that test several times and lives in South Dakota and says, man, we could do 50 people here. Maybe they couldn't do 3 fields, but they could do a smaller version as long as the sites were, amicable. Yeah, I don't think I would guess that we just haven't investigated that. And again, if we have investigated enough, I'd sure like to know that. I would.
Yeah, I think that needs to be investigated, because it would be, I think what you're going to do is you're going to draw more people. If you split the country up in 4 different sections, but they know, particularly people testing, they go, well, okay, 2 years from now, okay, I'll have the ability to run it in the East Coast and in the West Coast, okay, but they're going to run them concurrently. So you have an option. You can go to either or if you want. Or maybe they break it up geographically and say, okay, you're in this geographic region, we're going to do this.
Right.
Well, these are all things that need to be considered.
Right.
And I mean, it's a lot of work, but I think that we've gotten to the point now where you see a lot of pressure, on the invitational itself. And so it's not an easy undertaking. I mean, I volunteered there, and I've ran there a number of times, and some successfully, some not, but
well, I would think that's every handler who's ever been there more than once. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Right? I don't think anybody walks out of there going, yeah, I'm going to pass this like a utility test. No, that doesn't.
No, it's you can get it handed to you in a heartbeat out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, but I think this is something we need to be building on, and it needs to be worked on now.
Yeah.
And now I don't know. Again, I'm not privy to what the EC has done in the past, only what you hear. So I haven't been involved in that. But, you know, I think that this needs to be looked at, and I think it needs to be revisited and looked at very strongly
Right.
with a plan.
It's not just throwing a dart at the board. If you don't plan for it, if the goal was we're going to have this by 2028, fine. But we'd have I learned in the milk and the dairy industry, they would set a date for a new product, and then we backfilled in everything we needed to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it is that too ballsy a move in this kind of a thing, but I kind of like ballsy stuff. Like, say, let's have a concurrent invitational by 2028 and then work on it.
Yeah, I don't know what the date is. It could be
Right.
2028, it could be
Right.
2026 or
Right.
2025. But we need to determine that and say, we really want to do this. Now, how are we going to do this?
Right.
And let's figure this out.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there'd be there'd be no complaint on the membership on that one. Simply easing up the logistics of doing this for our members. That would be, I can't see where you get the opposition unless it was just financially impossible. And I believe it's not financially impossible. I think it is possible. Yeah.
No, I mean, the way I look at it is we can do that. It is financially possible. I don't think that's impossible at all.
Right.
I think it's very feasible. But again, there's a lot of work on the back end that has to be done on that.
Right.
And
it starts.
And you got to look
now.
at your sponsors and things like that.
Starts in January when you're in the vice president's seat.
Let's hope.
You also have a paragraph about apprentice judge scholarship programs. Touch on that a little bit, Jerry. Terry.
Well, originally, I mean, some chapters are doing that now.
That's what I thought.
And but I think that, and then NAVHDA did roll out a program recently. Interestingly enough, that there is a scholarship program now from International. I'm saying that that's not enough. I'm saying we need to do a little more than that. Okay, and to try to set up something where you can work with the local chapters on apprentices coming out of those chapters.
Mm-hmm.
To partner more with International. And I believe the number now is $500. But when you look at $500 helping an apprentice, whereas it's a good thing, it's a start, but I don't think it's enough.
Right.
You're looking at a minimum of 2 years being an apprentice.
Right.
And some of that is travel out of region. Some of it involves plane travel. Not everybody can drive there. I remember when I was apprenticing, I used to drive 11, 12 hours sometimes to get there.
Right.
But, with the price of gas these days, it doesn't take long to chew up that $500. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
So that was, so I think that we need to look at that. I think we're on the right track.
Right.
And I think we can improve upon that. And,
And here's just like what I like when I do other ventures, which I play with a lot. I like throwing things at the wall and seeing if something sticks, right? Something on that same line is it, I could see a possibility of having, instead of, we took the judges workshop and we twisted it into the annual meeting. I was not a big fan of that. I think it watered it down a little bit, but that's just one ex-judge talking about what he felt. If we know we need to have more judges to sustain NAVHDA's testing program, a judge's workshop could almost be an apprentice's job workshop with literally days spent in the field or a weekend spent in the field. And
possibility of that too.
Those are just things like if people don't throw out, I want to say crazy ideas, we tend to stay in the same footprints all the time.
Right.
I know, and I'm saying this for a lot of, I don't know when I first judged, it was 20 some years ago. A lot of us judges, it's mandated that we travel every third year, or at least once. You could do as many as you want, but at least one every 3. And I don't know the value of that with some of the judges that I've met and I've talked with and had a beer with afterwards. And and short of saying their names, which most people who know me know the judges I know, said, why are they making me come to this? Or, that time could be spent with true apprentice judges in a judge's workshop, as opposed to let's all get there and say, hey, from now on during duck search, I've never seen a whole lot come out of those old judges workshops other than a lot of camaraderie at the end of the night at the hospitality suite myself. But that's just me. So,
Well,
yeah.
but I have another thing to say. I want to add something to that, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been we've done a number of judges workshops via Zoom, and I'm not, I understand why it was done, and I understand that. But what I like to do is, I still think to get a good number of judges and apprentices together in a room once a year, okay, at the annual meeting, I think it's important because I think you have better interaction. People speak their minds more. People tend to come up with more ideas rather than sit on a Zoom meeting with your mic muted for the entire meeting.
Well, yeah, that's not going to get us anywhere. No.
And so I'm not saying, I think that Zoom has its place. Well, that's for lack of a better term. And those could be done, but I would still like to see, not make it mandatory they attend, but I mean, at least attend the online meeting. But I still would like to see that at the annual meeting. I think it's important.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, everyone's got different flavors for it. Everyone's got different feelings for it. I'm not opposed to it. I guess I just liked it when it was just the judges workshop. I remember a lot of good discussions.
Right.
And I hadn't been to a lot of them when they got mixed in with the annual meeting. I went to one just to cover my butt. But again, those are things that people can put up for motions. Those are things that chapters can.
Exactly.
That's why we have the motions. And if any of this does anything else, it might stir up a few good motions for the next meeting.
Right. I think that, but it does need to be in person. It's just important in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, of course, the argument would be, well, if you have a judge's workshop standalone, that's going to be more expensive and,
sure.
Things like that. I understand that. I think the original idea was to tie it with the annual meeting, so they figured people would be there.
Right.
Now, on some level that makes sense. But I still think those in-person meetings are important.
Yeah. I liked them. I liked them back in the day. I did. Another thing you talked about was anti-hunting dog regulations, or legislation rather.
We could talk about that for about 4 hours.
Right. But I'm just glad that to me, that almost marries up with our conservation partners. It's almost like stating the obvious. We need to stick together, I think, is what the message is there with all the dog groups, and because at some point when they get the low hanging fruit, they come, they always, certainly the hound. I'm glad I'm not a houndsman. I can tell you that, they're the ones, they are the low hanging fruit, but we would be next. And in your statement, you mentioned that.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, that's, I don't know. It's a critical issue that I don't think that people would really realize that. And, I have to admit, back in the day, I was guilty of that too, being a little apathetic. And I realized that it's probably been in the last 10 years that this is not, it's a basic anti-hunting movement, okay? And I've learned from these people, I support a group here locally in Vermont called the Vermont Traditions Coalition, and we have full-time lobbyists in our state house working on these issues, okay? And what rings clear to me is it's all based on anti-hunting, but they're going to do this incrementally. And so they go after, like you mentioned, the low-hanging fruit. And we've seen this goes on and on and on, and it goes on constantly, whereas they will go after the bear hound people.
Yeah.
And then, then they'll get a little bit here and a little bit there. I mean, we had a bill that was pending here, which we fought, where the owner had to be in immediate control of the dog at all times while hunting. Well, okay. Yes, I can be in reasonably immediate control of my dog, but define that. And they were saying, well, it has to be within 100 yards and this and that and everything else. And I'm saying this is just not going to happen. So I mean, these are the things that start, and it's insidious, and it creeps in on you, and you lose a little bit, and then eventually they regulate that. When they get to that point, then they're going to go after the bird dogs. We caught a guy actually saying off tape, he thought he was off tape, that well, we get the bear dogs today, we'll get the bird dogs tomorrow.
Right.
It's all rooted in anti-hunting. It has nothing to do about hunting with dogs, but that's where they're going after. That's the weakest link, so to speak.
Yeah. I'll tell you, we're very lucky in Michigan. We have the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation.
Right.
And it's dedicated to preserving the right to free cast our hunting dogs afield. And they work with MUCC, which is Michigan's very blessed. We have a lot of legislation watching our backs, but that law that you said somebody tried to slip in, they tried to slip one in here where a dog cannot be left unattended in a vehicle, which if you write that up in a commercial, like a Sally Field commercial at 2 a.m, they're going to show a dog in a hot car.
Yeah, of course.
But where it would affect us is if they could have passed that, I couldn't, even with an external dog box on my truck, I couldn't have taken one dog out in the woods and left the other one unattended.
Right.
But that's not the way they do it. They word it in just unattended. And then they show a picture of a dog in a hot car. Right. So you're exactly right. And I think that's another thing that I think is great in your platform. We got to be aware of all this stuff, conservation, growth, and what's, sneaking up behind us to try to stop us. We can screw up ourselves and stop it, but let's not let any other group stop it,
Right. Well, I think that this is where NAVHDA can really step up and collaborate with the other dog groups.
Yeah.
And also with, obviously, the conservation groups. And there are other alliances out there that we should be forging. Yeah. And we should belong to them. Okay. Yeah. And actually, I would like to see NAVHDA, if not somebody full-time, I don't know, volunteer, this needs to be worked out, but they actually have somebody that's watching this legislation. And there are groups out there that monitor that. So we should belong to those groups, okay?
Right.
And to see. And I know the argument would be, well, we're a nonprofit, we're not a non-lobbyist. That's fine, but we can still support other groups, okay? Right. And we can make our members, and we can still be a clearinghouse for that information, okay?
Right.
I'm not saying NAVHDA pay members to show up at somebody's lobby in somebody's state house. What I'm saying is, let's make the members aware, the chapter leaders or whatnot, and then make them aware of what's going on in their particular state.
Yeah.
And disseminate that information.
Right.
So they have that.
Right.
And to work with that, because this is crucial. This is if we lose our right to breed and hunt with our dogs, okay, NAVHDA is not going to be the organization it is now. I can tell you that right now.
No.
We're going to be running around and doing agility trials with our short hairs or something.
Yeah, North American versatile agility dog. Yeah.
No, don't make jokes. What I'm telling you is that is critical. I mean, if we don't stop this, we have to fight this at the very lowest level. I mean, I'm talking about, because we are the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
We go through this battle every year with the trappers. They try to stop the trapping. And, that's probably the first on the list.
Sure.
Then the big hounds, then the rest of it comes after that.
Right, right. And if one state gets away with it, guess what? That one state isn't going to have a NAVHDA test.
That's correct.
So, and that's what I like about your platform. It's not it's like we need to try this. We need to try this. We need to try that. That's what grabbed me when I read it. I was like, it wasn't like, I think we should do this. And you just bring out things that are very obvious, but we have a disconnect with in some form, different degrees of disconnection. And I like the ideas. I do. I'm looking forward to your inauguration. There won't be any pomp and circumstance like a crown or anything, because
don't. We'll see when the voting's over.
I know how the voting's going to go when this podcast comes out, Terry. In fact, there was just a letter, and this, I think it speaks kind of to what we're talking about. I think it was 3 days ago, I got a letter. We mentioned our managing director. Our managing director sent out letters to all chapter presidents and said that we have an extremely low voting turnout right now. It's electronic, it's through email with a verification. And the letter stated that encourage your members of your chapters to vote. They already saw that people, now again, there's only one position that's running opposed. And, I wish there was 4 positions running opposed. Honestly, I wish it was. That would be, right. We've got some new blood, but hey, a quart of new blood is better than, no new blood. And I like I like the way you're thinking, and I like the fact that you're stepping up. And you and I, I'm guessing, we've met each other before. We've shared a drink together. I can't remember where, but I know we did at an annual meeting or a judge's workshop. And we're not spring chickens, neither one of us.
No.
And the fact that you want to throw and what you're getting into, as far as a lot of volunteer hours to help an organization that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it. I love NAVHDA. I love NAVHDA. I've always never agreed with them sometimes. Sometimes we come at, I'm at odds with them on things, but at the end of the day, I still support the organization and,
right.
And what it stands for. And, it's about building a better hunting dog and conservation of game.
Right. Yeah.
I got that same, I guess somebody forwarded me that email from Kim. And it's a little disappointing, but there may be some technical issues with that too. I'm not sure.
Hard to say.
I do know that when I had to check my when the ballot came out, it got dumped into my spam folder. So I had to look in it and I found it there.
Gotcha.
So it could be. And I don't know, I just encourage people to get out and vote. You know what I mean?
Right.
And maybe because there's only one contested, that people don't, they're just not paying attention. I'm not sure. It's possible.
Right. Well, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised with an uptick in voting.
Well, I'd rather see people vote than not, to be honest.
Exactly. Because if you don't vote, you can't complain, right? If you vote, you got the right to complain a little bit anyway. And then you can start volunteering on your chapter level and get involved with everything we talked about for the last 40 minutes.
That's right.
Terry, I got to share with people that, like I said in the beginning, that if we did a 23andMe DNA check, and if our dog's blood samples were included in that, you and I are shirt-tail cousins. Well, it's true. You got your first wire hair named Tank. His father was Wesley, and Wesley's father was my dog Haskell.
Okay.
And I had mentioned to you one time that Haskell was the least cooperative, most talented pain in my ass I ever had. And you're like, well, that didn't happen with Tank. And I said, it should have, because Wesley was the least cooperative, obstinate, pain in the butt dog. So maybe it just means grandsons do better than their grandfathers. Tell me about Tank a little bit.
Well, Tank he was kind of an interesting dog. He's probably the most arrogant dog I ever owned. And, he was an incredible dog. He was my first dog that I got into NAVHDA with. So, I did a lot of training with him and whatnot. But prior to me getting into NAVHDA doing any testing, I did a lot of hunting with it, period. I mean, just, a lot of duck hunting. I mean, it's amazing. And it's funny you mentioned that because I think he passed away at 14. And I keep records of all my hunts.
Right.
It's kind of a real crazy thing. And when we tallied up all the Tank's hunts, he had well over 600 waterfowl retrieves in his career.
Wow.
And over 1,700 wild birds shot over him.
Phew.
So, but anyway, he was so when I got into NAVHDA, you could probably look at the test scores if you want to go back, but I'm just saying, and here's a typical test score with Tank. 198 prize 2. 198 prize 2. Okay. So, I'm a little slow sometimes, and you start realizing these things. And so, if you play this game long enough, you know that you're falling down somewhere, okay? And
Right.
with a score like a 198, it's not a critical area. And it was always retrieving. He was always retrieving. He'd come back and he'd go out and retrieve the shot bird, come back, spit it in my hand. But the dog was never force broke. But yet if I hunted wild birds with him, he retrieved right to hand. He'd come in and sit and retrieve to hand.
Yeah.
But if it feels like, because he'd gotten in his mind, okay, for whatever reason, this game we're playing out here with chuckers, okay, I'm going to run back, spit this bird out, and I'm going on to the next one.
Yeah.
Right? So finally, Blaine Carter said to me one day, he said, have you ever force broke that dog? And I said, no, I haven't. I said, you've hunted with him before, Blaine. You see how the dog is. He said, that's right. But he said, you got to force break him if you want to test a NAVHDA. I said, all right, how do we do that? I didn't know.
Right.
He said, come down in my basement with me. The dog is 99% there. He said, I guarantee you in 45 minutes, I'll force break him. And this was 2 weeks before his 5th or 6th utility test. Okay. So there was a lot of growling and screaming and yelling going on down Blaine's basement. And Blaine said, I'll bet he's going to be fine. I said, okay, we'll see. So I think 2 weeks later, we ran the utility test. Guess what? That was a 204 this time. Okay. So, and then he went on to be, pass with a 200 at the Invitational.
Wow.
But the thing is, he's probably, they always say that one person has that special dog in a lifetime. And all the other dogs are wonderful, but he was special. I mean, he was just, he was actually absolute hunting machine.
Yeah.
I mean, he hunted in so many states and Canada. It goes on and on and on. He was always there. So
oh, it's good. It's good to know because believe me, his grandfather is the only dog that ever got 2 zeros in a duck search. Now, that story goes, I don't know if you remember a judge by the name of Ken Whitney. He was in there before you were. He was from Kalamazoo. He was one of my mentors, and anybody with background in NAVHDA judging would remember Ken. And I brought Haskell up. I think I was trying to become a judge, and I had to pass a utility test. And he was the one that would just find new areas to just screw with me in. It'd be retrieving one day, drag another day, which is retrieving, of course, but duck search another day. Other days he felt like, oh, he must be duck hunting, and he'd do a good duck search. But this day he launched himself off the bank and went about 15 yards into this spring pond and climbed up on a muskrat hut, and we saw his head go down, and he picked up a goose egg out of a nest. And he got back in the water, 15 yards back up on the bank and handed me that goose egg.
And that's what you got.
And so I got 2 goose eggs in duck search. So, and of course they let me resend them, but you know exactly what he was going to do, because geese usually have more than one egg in a nest. And we did not want to, interfere with the nesting season. So yeah, his grandfather has the notoriety getting the only 2 zeros, the only 2 goose eggs in the duck search. So there's a little history for you. But
yeah, that's funny.
But
well, I've got a young wire here now, which is a Schwarzwald dog out of Kyle Huff. I don't know if you know Kyle Huff or not.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And she's a real pistol. And but I'll just share a quick story with last year about the Invitational. So this dog was hitting on all 8 cylinders, and we get to the Invitational last year, and I sent her on the blind. Now, keep in mind that this was the very first event of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, right out of the gate, I had the whole day to look forward to. So we send her down there. I send her out on the blind. She popped, came back, and I'm going, oh, don't do this to me today, will you? So I know the game. So I sent her again. She's halfway across, and I go, all right, I'm home.
Right.
Something caught her attention, and there was a culvert down there, about 50 yards or so. And she decided she's going to swim all the way to the culvert. Went up on top of the road over there and say, hey, Dad, what's going on? I'm up here. What are you doing? So anyway, they were kind to me. I think I don't know who was there. I think Cheryl Tepp was there, and I said, well, there's a 0 to start out with, and they gave me a 1. But anyway, so I had the rest of the day to look forward to. But the dog did beautifully the rest of the day. I mean, so a lot of people would have quit and said, bag it. I'm not going through this. You know what I mean? But
right.
I figured, no, we're going to do it now. We're going to have fun, and we'll have fun with it. But it's which leads me to one thing, and one comment that I want to make. I don't know if you're out of time or not, or whatnot, but NAVHDA is an organization. I think we need to. I'm struggling for words here, but a lot of people join this organization because they don't want to test. They want to train their dog to have a better hunting dog. And I think as an organization, we must, see these people and understand them and work with them. And not, in other words, there shouldn't be so much emphasis on testing because, and I'm not saying testing is wrong, it's great. I go through the system all the time. But there are a lot of people out there that just don't want, they just want to train their dog. They want to come to the clinics and they want to train their dogs.
Yep.
And that's what they want to do. So, I mean, we need to, and I think we do a pretty good job, but I just want to throw that out. If anybody out there, just say, hey, it's okay. If you just want to come to NAVHDA and train your dog, you don't need to test. This is not mandatory.
Right. Right. And I think a little, it's a good way to wrap it up. And this is me being me. I don't think all those stories in VHD magazine help, because all we ever see is I got this and I got that and I got this and I want to go to the Invitational. I think maybe we need an issue. Of course, this won't fall under your jurisdiction. I'll just have to write the article myself. It should be a story about dogs like yours and mine, how good of hunters they were because we trained them for the test. But you don't have to test, because the test is filled with heartaches. And if you're not thick-skinned, that could turn you off from it. And to me, it's always been about the laughs. Literally, I've gleaned so much from NAVHDA and learned so much, especially, being a judge helps even more. But I think you're right. If people, that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be to have a better trained hunting dog that you don't sit there and yell at. I had one of those 30 years ago. I thought I thought the louder you yelled, the more they would listen, and it's the opposite, you know?
Right.
And yeah, I think we need to let people know that this is about a group of people that are really there to help you. And I've told people, you join a chapter, and if you're not a wallflower, I can't help you there. But if you take what it's really meant to be, you're going to have a better trained hunting dog. That's always
That's the bottom line. Yeah.
and the breeders can sell better dogs, and some of them can go on to the test to show how well their dogs can take training, but it should be about hunting and just getting a little bit better performance out of your dog. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Which is why I always set my bar very low, Terry.
Well,
I
here's what it is.
yeah, I remember Chip Bondi called me up and said, "Hey, Ron, you're due for a test." I said, "Yeah, next year, right?" He goes, "No, this year." And I said, "Well, I already got 4 judging assignments." He goes, "I'm sorry to hear that. You need to get a utility prep test done in." And I pulled it off by the skin of my teeth. But had I, and this was not a test dog, you know, but had I not hunted that dog a lot and done everything I did in NAVHDA, I wouldn't have been able to do that. You know, and people, I don't think all members realize it in the beginning. And yeah, we need to get that word out, that why we do this. And, you know, for me, it's half the laughs, but it is to have that dog in the last 15 years. If I lost my voice, I could still go hunting.
That's right.
I couldn't say that 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'd be glad to have your voice on the EC. Speaking of voices,
Well,
Terry.
let's hope it works out. We'll see. We'll find out how the voting shapes up in the next, about roughly 2 weeks, somewhere around there.
Right. I'm gonna put this episode out early, and I wish you all the best of the luck. I hope to see you at the annual meeting when they announce you as our next vice president, and I look forward to watching your platform grow.
All right, Ron, thank you very much. Good to talk to you.
Thanks for coming on, Terry.
Bye.